Review of previous minutes and approval.
Please pay close attention to the attendance list because I'm not sure I got it right.
Anything on the minutes from the April 6th meeting? Any changes, additions?
I just have one question, and it's just kind of procedural thing, but when we did the election of officers, when we asked the secretary to cast a ballot, and it reads that Ron Smith made the motion, nominations be closed, and the secretary cast one ballot for the chair. Should the word current go in front of that so we can identify who the chair is? We have the list of the chair above that. That was just a question.
It was a slate that was presented, so technically
But we
don't
didn't
need to specify that
Yep.
because we were casting one ballot for the slate for the chair.
But
it was listed on the slate.
For the chair.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just procedural. Thank you.
Anything else? Do we have a motion to accept?
Oh, jeez, wait, hold on here, people. I forgot I'm the secretary. Oh, man. Whoops.
Shall we refer back to Ann?
Oh, gosh. All right, start all over here. What time did we?
7 o'clock.
On the dot here.
Dave Allen made a motion to accept the secretary's report. Who seconded?
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? How about the minutes from the April 20th, the special meeting?
Well, you didn't get them. That's why I sent you an email today.
Yeah, I didn't get a copy of
Debbie,
the
I sent you an
post.
email today saying
My computer crashed this afternoon.
that I didn't see it in John's stuff.
Yeah,
Did
I
you
never
send
got a
it to
copy of the
John?
post.
No, I sent it to you. and,
Okay,
executive-
okay. We'll get them out so that you can look at those. It was just a special meeting. Treasurer's report.
The reports were mailed out this morning, and if anybody had any questions, I got one question already, and they want to know what the balances were. Oh yeah, forgot, got to put those in, so I'll get to that this week. I'll add the balances to the spreadsheet for each month, and I'll send them out again.
I make a motion that we table approval of those until they're edited.
Second.
You guys have to talk slower when I'm the secretary. Okay. Motion by Ann to table.
Second.
Seconded Dave Sherman.
He could play it back in slow
I
motion.
don't like to watch them. Motion by Ann to table it until we get the completed. Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Enforcement list. We have a few. First one is Gill Hall. Paramedic certification surrendered effective 4/8. Allowed to maintain basic certification expiring 6/30/16. Shall not reapply for paramedic certification prior to 6/30/16 for violations of 10 NYCRR Part 800.16 G. Second one is Teresa McClear, suspended for 3 months effective 2/4/15, placed on probation for 3 years effective 2/4/15, assessed a civil penalty of $2,000 for violations of Part 800.16 G. Brett McGuire, suspended 6 months effective 4/15/15. The suspension is stayed. Placed on 3 years probation effective 4/15/15. Assessed a civil penalty of $1,000. Part 800.15B and 800.16 G. Suspended for 2 months effective 4/8/15. The suspension is stayed for Michelle Barra for Part 800.15B. And Shane Mizakappa suspended for 1 year, effective 3/16/15, suspension is stayed, assessed a civil penalty of $2,000, of that $1,500 is suspended contingent upon compliance with a stipulation and order, Part 800.16C and 800.16D. The next correspondence is from the Department of Health, from Lee Burns, sent to Canton Potsdam Hospital, acknowledging that they have provided the necessary paperwork and items to become a provisional level 3 trauma center. So this is quite an accomplishment. I think they're one of the first ones under this new format that happened. So Dr. Delaney is going to send a letter to them acknowledging that accomplishment. So something will be going out from Dr. Delaney on that, acknowledging that. Any other correspondence? Jim, Remsco CMAC meeting.
I left a copy of the minutes from the State Council meeting that was held May 14th, 2015. I'm going to just hit on a few of the high points. It's 5 pages long, reading for your entertainment. One of the things that they've been working on is the amendments to Part 800, and they're now published. They made changes and are now published in the State Register. What they did is clean up the language a lot in the regulations to bring them up to date, and they think it's going to help with the new language, help agencies and councils to do their job better. Also, they under 812, which deals with reciprocity, they've changed a lot of the regulations on that to make it easier to get reciprocity. As far as the BLS CPAP policy statement and training package, that will be posted on the EMS Bureau website in the near future. Another thing that was rather encouraging was that the electronic PCR, there's statewide, it's about 90% of the calls are being submitted by electronic PCRs, which they say it's about 2.5 million was submitted last year. Okay, let's see. There's a new BLS protocol revision for hemorrhage control. I do have a copy of that. Also, one of the things that our CMAC is looking into is Dr. Daly reported on the check and inject program, which is allowing basic EMTs or BLS personnel trained and authorized to administer intramuscular epinephrine for anaphylaxis patients. That's been done in Washington State and had quite a bit of success. I think the last meeting, somebody said EpiPens now are up to $650 per pen. 4 years or 5 years ago, I know when I was managing, it was like $45 a pen. So they've gone up substantially. So what this program's about, these kits without the training component is like $6, but you get the training component, it's $50 per kit. It includes the oversight of physician control and stuff like that, and it has 2 syringes, one for peds, one for adult, plus the vial, and it just has to be approved by the REMAC, and an agency has to be willing to do it. And all these kits expire after the tag is over with, which is 18 months. So if somebody's interested, they should contact Debbie or Dr. Delaney at this time. Another thing they wanted to, the peer committee, the state council award nominations to go to national had to be in at June 1st this year because they changed the date. So next year, just for your information, we're going to have to move up the awards for our regional awards to the state by May 1st, just because national has moved their date up. So like those of us on the peer committee, we are going to have a quick meeting by telephone next week to make the decisions on what goes up to national. One of the things that training and ed, if you notice, it's on page 3, has to deal with the critical care level of certification. The state is going to have a committee set up to look at it. One of the reasons why is currently the curriculum, there's no book that matches the curriculum, so they're going to look at it with the intent is see what direction the state is going to go in with the critical care. And so we're going to, Debbie and I are both on the training and ed committee, and we're going to be following that as closely. We might be asking agencies for some information so we can get this information forwarded to the state. The one thing you have to look at it is that there are sections of the state that the only ALS is the critical care, and that's I've always felt it's better to have critical care than have no ALS. But the big thing is, the big problem in the state with the critical care is because it's not a national program, each course sponsor kind of has they have the base, but they add things to, even regionally, what level 3's critical cares can do is based on region, and we need to more standardize it throughout the system. Excuse me. Let's see. Another thing is that they're going to be looking at is the 822 regulations, which deals with the construction of ambulances. That's pretty old. I think the thought was that it was written in the law around 1975 and really needed to be updated. And those of us on that committee, we're going to look at not only the NFPA standards, the Triple K standards, and the CAAS standards, plus the Canadian and the European standards to try to come in with some new standards that would be far-reaching even 20 to 30 years from now. Also, just more of an awareness at that committee report, it's was noted that Chevrolet will discontinue the manufacture of the Duramax engine after the 2016 model. So, and Ford is thinking away, I think they've all pretty much done away with their diesels in their vans. So that's something we're going to have to address. The paramedicine, just for those that are interested, it has passed the Assembly, and it's just some language before it passes the State Senate, and that should be any time now, whenever they clear out the language differences. Another thing is they've had some of this, they had an incident in Syracuse region with the synthetic marijuana abuse. There was a crisis in the state, and the department, within less than 24 hours, come up with some protocols because for the safety of the EMS. And I think we should really be thankful that we have our regional office that looked after our providers down in Syracuse, because John can maybe enlighten you on how threatening it is with this synthetic marijuana, how these people get really violent, and some of the drugs that we have don't work. They got special protocols very quickly. You might want to tell them about that, John, because it is a safety issue.
Jim, thank you for that kind thought. What I'd say is this. We identified that, for example, SUNY had 27 of these patients in 24 hours, acutely violent, had to paralyze them, had to do a bunch of stuff. Here are some things we basically learned. Whatever you do, do not give Haldol to these guys, which has traditionally been one of our drugs in the chemical restraint formula. It makes them nuttier, okay? So that's issue number one. Issue number two, these folks have, this, for us who've been doing this a long period of time, it reminds me a little bit of an old-time PCP overdose. Yeah. But these folks are stronger and more violent and more paranoid schizo. As an example, there are a couple cases, not the hinge cuffs that cops carry, not the full-bore hinge, but you take the old cuff link, the link type, the chain link, these guys can break them pretty easily and don't even care. I asked REMAC and advised REMAC at our prior meeting that, look, if we start seeing this come up here and we get a lot of these going, let me know and communicate, and I'm willing to work toward getting the same approval emergency process where they are. The physicians and people who are at attendance say it hasn't been a problem thus far, which is a good thing, okay? But if it comes, we'll do that, and we'll work on getting a benzo out and do a quick training and just-in-time training and get it done. This is one of those and the big reason we're doing it is, you go in, figure out what's going on with the call. You figure out, okay, he's on synthetic marijuana. Okay, you now got to go play Mother May I to get drugged, then go back in and fight with him to go do it. The other thing is you can do the same stuff right now, just getting it in online order. The other thing I think lesson learned has been, rather than give this stuff IV, given an IM, they're so hyped up the amount of absorption time by how their metabolism is speeded up and so forth, it generally is as good as giving an IV. I mean, but at any rate, it's there. If we get into trouble, you know, we got to convene the REMAC physicians. Dr. Delaney was all on board. Well, she didn't think the physicians would balk at this at all in terms of making it standing if we need to in a crisis. And this is about crew safety. The other thing is this. One other thing, two other caveats I'll just talk about quickly. If you end up restraining these folks, okay, make sure you got enough help. This is not one of these ones you go in, well, three of us will go do it. You probably want, you know, a lot of help, more the merrier, okay? And go at it organized, but do it in as humane a way as we can, okay? The statewide BLS protocols allow us to do that. And get them to the ground, but please make sure you restrain them in a face-up manner, okay? Because putting them face down, hypoxia issues and so forth are problematic. Two other things that seem to be working pretty well. The Central New York, Dan Olson just put out an email about this, and I'll share it, and I think it's a good thought. One is, if you have the ability of side stream capnography on some of our newer ones where you can put in and get CO2, that's not a bad idea in these restraints, because then it shows you that you're not making them hypoxic and everything else. And then the second thought is, if you restrain them, if you take the pulse probe and put it on, and you'll get a PO2, but also you'll get waveform, which tells you there's a pulse. So that way you can put that on especially during a long transport, put it on every few minutes, you know, rotate it around the fingers and then document it. And now you can prove you actually had pulses, more so than even document. It gives you physical documentation that's pretty undeniable, you know what I'm trying to say. Those are some quick tips, you know what I'm trying to say. Please, though, please, people are getting, I mean, we've had people, cops, we've had EMS workers, we've had people get hurt with these patients, so be careful, okay? And hey, if you going in and they're trashing the building or there's, you know, and you don't have the right help, scene safety, our safety first, okay? The deal is I want everybody coming home in going out to call in one piece and coming home in one piece, and that's really our commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. In regards to an incident report, the state has approved the draft of this new report form for the 800 requirements of reportable incidents. It's more user-friendly. Yep. I have a draft, several drafts of it if you're interested, that our committee worked on it quite a bit, and it's made a little more simple. We get a little better data, and it's a little simpler to use. Excuse me. Another thing is, they mention it the First Responder Disability Awareness Training Program. That was mentioned at the State Council, and that's done through Niagara University. The following week, I took the course, trainer, and it's a very good course. About you can break it down in modules and stuff like that. But I would encourage people, if they're interested in it. I learned a lot about it, how to take these electric wheelchairs and stuff like that, and put them in neutral, and how to take care of. I was really surprised at the percentage of people that had disabilities, and when I finished reading the manual from front to back, I decided that everybody has a disability of some sort, and we need to know how to deal with people with disabilities, and that's all I got to say. But I would encourage everybody to take one. Also, the ground ambulance equipment requirement for children, there's going to be some revisions on that at the national level. Basically, New York State was in compliance. The only thing that they took out nationally was the pediatric traction splints, which I think is a move in the right direction. That's the end of my report. Anybody needs any other questions or wants documents, I got plenty of them for you.
Any questions for Jim? Moving on. REMAC, we did have a quasi-REMAC meeting prior to this. We did not have enough docs present, so it was just informational, so there was nothing to vote on. And what we covered there, we'll be covering under other reports down here. So we'll move on to John in the program agency.
Okay. First thing, oops, happened to mine. Part of my thing just disappeared. The EMTI to AMT upgrade, Colton is upgraded. West Potsdam, that should be, is still deciding whether they want to upgrade or not. And 3 Mile Bay, apparently, didn't answer me, but I was told they decided to downgrade. That will be effective July 1st, correct, John? There's no change in that or anything like that. So we'll be going on from there. Inspections, Madrid Rescue, Rensselaer Falls, and Colton for their AMT upgrade are done. I'll put these aside because these were things that required MAC votes. We're enrolling people in the online CME website, and I've enrolled to date 153 people, which is a little less than half of the ALS providers in the region. To entice people, I talked to Dr. Delaney, and we had a little plan that we're going to do controlled substances. There are agencies coming online with controlled substances all the time that aren't necessarily familiar. A CME for them to do on controlled substances that explains the entire procedures and everything, and they can get an hour's worth of CME by taking a test that's going to be on that website. All right, and even the people who signed up for it before, they can also take the test and get the 1 hour's worth of CME doing that. So that should encourage people to sign up. Hopefully, I hope to have everybody, if I could, by the end of June, so that we can move into the first semester. I'm probably sure we'll have some stragglers here and there. We're going to resend out another email to everybody that I have an email for that's an ALS provider to get them to sign up on the website. I was getting quite a few of them for a while, but it sort of trickled down in the last couple of weeks. Just to mention this, the CPAP, we received from the state the package with the policy and the protocol. All the protocols now are published in this flow sheet sort of thing, which I find confusing because I'm used to the old style protocol, so it gets me a little. Spoke to Andy. Andy says that he's a little too busy to put together a training presentation, so that's going to be up to each individual region to put together a training presentation. I have one from back when we started with CPAP that's actually pretty good. I'm going to pass that over to Debbie to tweak it a little bit for us, and then they can be distributed to all the different agencies to do that. What's required for the training, I actually recommended, there were no absolute requirements, but it's recommended from the department that they do 3 hours of didactic lecture, which is maybe a little long for the presentation, 1 hour of psychomotor skills and hands-on practice in actually applying the CPAP devices. And it's going to be key to each individual agency, because we didn't set a requirement for a particular one, which probably would be illegal. But I've only, on all the inspections I've done, I've only basically seen 2 different manufacturers, Buzenak and the O2 Rescue, just about. And those seem to be the ones that are most popular. I have the training package for O2 Rescue, and I'll send that over to Debbie so she can send that out to the agencies that are doing that, so that individualized training package with some slides and videos will go with that. And 2 hours written, what's on the actual thing they sent was 2 hours written in skills remediation, but I assume that means skills testing in that particular case. In other words, and then remediation if they need remediation in the written and testing format. Just for information, we talked about EpiPens. Since I've been here, I haven't received, this is the first EpiPen use that I've received, and one of the issues that were brought up at State Council, unbelievably, that they did a calculation by the number of EpiPens that are purchased and the number that expired, that we're throwing away approximately $10 million in EpiPens every year. Okay, so that issue came up. You know, like I said, this is the only time I've seen it. The patient did get better, and the patient was discharged okay from the ER, and that's a great thing. But probably the expense calls the whole thing into question a little bit. And hopefully that new program will do that. And I'll finish with one piece of really good news. I received this from the Indian River High School and with the AED, and they used their AED to defibrillate a young guy that was 16 years old, and would successfully defibrillated him. He was transferred to the hospital, transferred onward to the tertiary center, and received an implantable defibrillator. Okay, and was discharged okay from the hospital. If you read that, he's never ever to go to gym again. That's what it actually says on there. Which is probably because I don't know exactly what the thing was. I'm assuming he had long QT syndrome, which basically causes these things when people engage in certain types of. You said it was a family thing too.
Yep, they tested his
common.
sister and found it,
Runs in
and so
family.
she's been taken care of prior to having any problems.
Okay. Okay, that was actually an excellent job by the school staff in applying the defibrillator within 2 minutes, basically, and getting a positive outcome. And that's all I have.
Any questions for program agency?
Just a comment under the CPAP. The Buziak site also, or they used to have a video as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. I just had the other one
So-
because we had O2 Rescue where I was.
That can be used as a resource. In the program agency, in those files, there's also a CPAP training, because we used to do, when it first came out for the ALS providers. So that's there too, that can be used as a resource. And there's also a written test that's developed, so, and again, it's 4 years old, so obviously it needs to be tweaked and, the appropriate level of care added in there, but just letting you know.
There's a lot of, actually, I have a lot of stuff I actually put in the stuff that I did, and I put in some of the stuff directly from Andy's list of things he wants to have in there too, because he had a few things that he specifically wanted to have in there. So I added those also.
Anything else for program agency? Moving on to executive committee. The executive committee and the program agency committee have been communicating and doing things on the transfer of the program agency. And we'll cover that a little bit further down. Training and ed, Debbie.
Just a second.
Do you want me to read them for you?
That's all right. No, I'm all right. I'm all set.
Look at the same time.
Education and training is bringing forward 2 seconded motions to the Remsco to vote on. The first seconded motion is to approve the recommendation for SUNY Canton College's core sponsorship renewal contingent on the following: development of a preceptor training and identification program, work with New York State DOH to ensure budget process meets New York State guidelines, and to complete field internship agreements with the ambulance services, and then to have SUNY Canton core sponsorship follow up with the Department of Health when they've completed these items. That is our recommendation.
Any questions?
To approve that recommendation.
All those in favor of accepting SUNY Canton's core sponsorship with those recommendations being done and followed up by Department of Health?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried.
Okay. Second motion is to approve the recommendation for Jefferson County EMS and Jefferson Community College core sponsorship renewals following review from the Education and Training Committee, because we won't be meeting again before June 30th. So our recommendation is to approve those pending the review of the Education and Training Committee.
Any?
Okay, wait, you guys tell me who made the motion?
Isn't that coming as a second?
It's coming as a
motion?
seconded
It comes
motion.
It's coming as a seconded motion from the Education Training. Who made the
So we
motion?
don't need a motion.
You don't need a motion.
Any questions on that? Unless you'd like to meet before June 30th, which we can do if you would prefer to vote on these.
Wouldn't that be the same thing for the other one then?
Yes.
I was gonna have to fix it in there, don't worry.
Okay.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions?
Thank you. Oh, the last thing is we had a lengthy discussion on what Jim had brought up in his Remsco report on the critical care course and our critical cares in our region. And as an education training committee, we're going to be looking at the agencies, finding out how many critical cares work for that particular agency. And if there wasn't a critical care level, how that would impact those areas. We're looking at the ages of the critical care in those agencies, because that plays a big role. And also where the closest available paramedic units would be in case there wasn't a critical care levels in those agencies. Specifically, let's say an agency was 20, 25 minutes away from that, but that agency only has one paramedic, you know what I mean? So how many times would that one be able to get to that agency's area? So that we can develop and see what the impact is going to be on our region, so that we can come up with something and send it to Department of Health on how it would impact our region. So we're going to be working on that. That's the end of my report. Any questions?
If you haven't already thought of it, the one thing I would add to that is how many actual calls are actually covered by the EMTCCs and then a percentage of the calls, because those would be assumed to be not covered if there were no EMTCCs. And that might make a stronger argument for what you're trying to say.
Thank you, John. Any other questions?
Ron, CON.
Yes, my report is that we have nothing to report.
Have we closed out the Guilfoyle CON and done a reimbursement?
Okay, have we closed that out?
Not yet. Is that good?
You were gonna check to make sure you'd submitted everything, so I don't know if you've done that.
I've been busy and I believe I forgot to check.
Can we try to take care of that in the next week here? I don't want that to strangle on. Let's get that.
Yep, I will try to look into that.
Thank you.
So you have none, you've heard from nobody looking to,
For the first time, and I can't remember, I have nothing to report unless somebody else has something.
Wow, that'll be your shortest report.
I know it.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
Write that down.
Air Medical.
The last air
medical committee meeting was on May 7th. If you remember at the last meeting, I had reported that they were going to potentially invite some other air medical services that did not routinely participate in that meeting and discuss potentially going towards a statewide committee and potential discussion on some statewide clearinghouse stuff. Since then, the committee, as a committee of the Central New York Remsco, has been redirected by their Remsco, and it was reported by the chair at that meeting that their focus is going to be more on, you know, utilization and education, et cetera, in regards to the usage of air medical, hence changes my previous stance in regards to us continuing to be involved in that. It seems to be more regionalized now, so Debbie asked whether we should form something like that, and that would certainly be up to this group. The next meeting, which I will be attending, will be November 12th.
Any thoughts from the group on, since Central New York is trying to make theirs more regionalized and things in their area, do you feel we need to look at doing something for our region, or are people happy? I try to send out those reports when I get them so everybody can see the reports from Air Methods. Do you feel you need anything more? Are we good with where things are right now, or?
Well, everybody's thinking. That reminded me of something else that we did. One of the things that we've always done in those meetings is we had, you know, any issues or whatever with the data or the reports, or operationally with either the TLC clearinghouse or our clearinghouse. The one thing that was brought to my attention was the size of the font in the in the printout, so I'll try and get that fixed. And Bob had a chance to review it, and we did notice a couple of, they weren't operational issues, but they were document entry issues, where there was a call that was duplicated in the data, and one that was a set Oneida and was a Oswego, or vice versa. So we were able to clean that up and look at that, but out of all of them, there was just a couple. That's good, because I couldn't see
I had to
it.
too. I was like,
I'm working on that.
nothing
so.
you want to read at night, because boy, it's small font. So at this point then, is it the consensus of the group that we don't need to look at doing something for our region? We're good with where we're at and leave it at that? Okay. Program Agency Committee. This was something that was brought up at our meeting when we talked about looking at making the change, and Jim Devers and Craig Ballard offered to sit on it, and Fred Lampman from Jefferson County offered to sit on it as well. So we have a committee of 3 that are working on this, along with the executive committee. Fred, I know you were tied up, so you weren't able to be on the call on Friday. But what we basically did is we developed a list of tasks that need to be completed in order to do the move, and we tried to put people responsible for it in a time frame when it would be completed. We have not been able to sit down with Sean Miller at Canton. Denise Young and I are going up on June 11th to sit down and have a face-to-face conversation. We've had calls with her and all that, but want to sit down and make sure that they're comfortable with what we've come up with for when the office would be shut down, and make sure everything is taken care of. The deliverables obviously need to be completed at Canton for the June 30th contract period so that they get paid for this last quarter, and making sure all that is taken into account there. A letter was sent from Department of Health notifying them that the contract was not being renewed and that it was going to Fort Drum as of July 1st. Letters went out to all the agencies along with information from Fort Drum so that they had that. And my understanding, well, I know because I looked at it, the ad for the program agency director was in the Sunday paper, the Watertown Daily Times, and those resumes are due by the close of business on June 8th. The anticipation is to have program agency director in place for the July 1st startup with Fort Drum. And the hope being in the next couple weeks, the decision of where the office is going to be and all that stuff, so we have addresses and can start all of that. So along those lines, I have a question for this group. Do you want to see an additional meeting in July, mid-July, end of July, to give you an update where we're at? We don't meet again until September 21st. Or do you just prefer communication via email with a status of where things are at? I want to make sure everybody has what they want and need. I don't want anybody to feel they're left out of it. If you want to have a meeting, we certainly can, or if you're comfortable just with email communication, we can do that. Everybody's good with email?
Yeah.
The press release had gone out as well. I don't know if people saw that, so that was all done as well. So.
Deb, do you want to see, just put out there that we're going to be looking for volunteers?
We just don't know the date yet,
Yeah,
because
at some point, but just to get people spinning up that maybe.
we will be looking for some assistance to help move the equipment when we know where it's going. Remsco, we will have the expense of a U-Haul to do that move. John has provided us the asset listing, so that will be going out to the committee to review. He's already identified that there's some things probably that aren't on there that needs to be put on there, but it gives us a starting point so we can see what the assets are. So we are proceeding with that. Any questions on that? Okay. County reports. I know Charlie wasn't feeling well, so Deb, do you have any report that you can give for us?
Yes. He gave me 3 things to bring up. The first one is that we still have agencies in Jefferson County that have not signed the mutual aid agreement. The second thing is we had a great scratch rate for the month of May. The scratch rate for all the agencies in Jefferson County was a 1.19% scratch rate. And the last thing was there will be a full-scale exercise on Fort Drum in August. As it gets closer to that, Charlie will get a hold of the agencies later on that would be responding or being part of that exercise. And that's his report.
Is the date out published for it, or?
He just said in August, so I don't know. He must have the exact date, but that's what he told me.
Maybe a surprise drill, which I understand.
Yeah, yeah. Full-scale exercise in August.
I was at a meeting the other day where they were talking about it, and we'll give a date at that meeting either.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Any questions for Jefferson County?
St. Lawrence.
I would like to introduce you to the new chair of the St. Lawrence County EMS Advisory Board, Ms. Carol, who would love to give report for St. Lawrence County.
Boy, she threw you under the bus there, didn't she? We will change it on the county report so your name shows there for the next meeting.
We met on the 26th, and we had our election. I was elected chair. And Ann is secretary.
I couldn't get rid of it all the way. I got roped into that like.
We had a few people that have left our group, and got at least 2 that are one we stopped his application in, and it's across the street at the
legislators.
And we have another one, Jim Bob's, asked to be on our group. His will be done. Our next meeting will be until September. We're going to try and reboot our committee for our meetings to follow our meetings here so that we can give them a better update on things.
So do you think we can perhaps get that for those two folks before our September meeting so we can vote on it here?
It depends on how fast they are.
We cannot speak for the legislators, but we will follow up on it.
It's very tend to be a little bit on the slow side sometimes.
What were the two names? Carol, what were the two names of the people?
Mark Devers and Jim Barr.
And Jim Barr.
If there's any program things we can offer as a Department of Health or come up and speak on special topics or whatever for to help draw in a little crowd or something, certainly willing to make the trip. And that is Lewis and Jefferson too. But I mean, but we've you know, if we need something to kind of help, let me know. I understand. I got it. I got it.
We're going to work at it.
We'll talk later.
Okay, that's all right.
Bob, how about Lewis County?
Actually, it's going to be a pretty brief report. We've got nothing new, startling, or exciting on the EMS front. Classes are going to take a little summer break right now. Lots of interest in the BLS Narcan. Taught 2 classes on that. The BLS CPAP, we're gearing up for that. Had a lot of buzz about that. There's a lot of BLS providers that are really excited about that, so it's good that they want it. We had our EMS banquet at the beginning of EMS week, and we did our awards recognition for the county then. The keynote speaker, the topic was situational awareness and code words on scene and the importance of the critical incident stress debriefing. I guess he was a pretty good speaker, so I'm told. Our radio system testing will begin at the end of June for full foliage testing, so we're looking forward to that. And we're gearing up for the Lewis County Fair.
Any questions for Lewis County? John, how about if I slide you in here? Do you want to say anything from the state?
A couple of things. We had the EMS Memorial on the 19th of May. At 1 p.m. It seems that moving that to 1 p.m., the legislators were out in force. Probably the best, even a little better attending than we did 9/11 in terms of representatives from the governor's office and other key state agencies, Ag and Markets, Dishes, OGS, number of folks. So that was very good. Unfortunately, yes, we did induct 2 new people this year. This is the 11th year. It's hard to believe we've been at this 11 years with the memorial. Just as a point of reference, when we originally did the first year of the memorial, we did 24 people because, you know, we're covering a number of years back. There are now 48 leaves on that memorial, and OGS cut on new, they etch into the granite new stars of life for future, and they added another 20. It's a very moving ceremony, very well attended with EMS services and so forth, and I just point that out. It's a testament to the people who paid the ultimate sacrifice for what we do. And enough said of that. Couple of things, just I'll be quick. It's well laid out here in the report, and you've heard much of the state council news. Couple things, just reminders. I'm fielding a lot of phone calls about, gee, so we can stop using backboards tomorrow because that's where we're all going with this. The answer is no. Okay? The statewide BLS protocols need to be changed. They've got to come out with some educational documents. Everybody wants this thing done now, okay? Unfortunately, from a Department of Health's point of view, we have to change 5 base curriculums. We have to then rewrite the written exams, or not rewrite them, if you will, re-edit them to make sure that our questions aren't, you know, leading people in the wrong directions where they'd normally be spinal mobilized and so forth. And the other thing is we have transitional transitional time to allow this to occur to make it work so that the break's right, so you're not like teaching it one way and testing it another. And that's kind of where we are.
I think they were going to write the questions in September. There's a committee.
Yes, and there's a
target of January 1st.
that is where we're heading at the moment. And also the training module will be out in draft. Now that the September meeting is out though, and not getting that approved, that may push this whole timeline back to next spring, Jim. I don't know, I've not heard anything official, but that occurs to me that...
That's why nobody's saying any date.
Right, there's no date. So God only knows when we'll figure this out, but it's gonna happen. So that's kind of where that is. Lee sent out an email, a memo to all services that just says, you need to continue using backwards as you've traditionally been taught and trained, med legally, and otherwise we can't implement this piecemeal. It's got to be done as a standard. Which brings me to the other major change about protocol development. John showed earlier the flow chart design that will become the new, and the new shock board is also very much that flow chart design. But one of the things that is the other major change is, as we've traditionally just dribbed and drab each council changed, we're now going to start doing it once a year. So that maybe we can combine them all into one 4-hour training in one night, not having to read the same thing over and over and move it along. And that'll depend year to year. Now obviously the other reason that that is being looked at is the following. As you know, this November, I believe it is, no, October, the National Academy of Science and the the Canadian Heart Stroke Foundation and the European Union meet in Dallas to finally create the final set of revisions to BCLS, ACLS standards. They had made it very clear this is the last time they're going to do it that way. Used to be, our history has been since literally the early 70s. Every 5 years they would roll out the new changes. That's no longer happening. What they will do is they will provide updates out when the science changes and they feel that it's significant enough to rate a change. That's good and bad, but what it does is it forces us to then have to look at this, doing it once a year versus every time something changes. Because if you start looking at it from, and hopefully we can get the timing of this right to make it work in the exam cycles and so forth. So that's the other reason why that is being changed. And I just mentioned that's kind of significant.
I put it in my minutes. I remember we pushed for that at the training.
Right, and that did come. That did get approved.
We're doing a lot of creative stuff.
And I think that's great. The one other, oh, by the way, and I just mentioned this under protocol changes that are happening, is this. For those of us who remember the day where we had the BLS protocols and the CFR protocols all the same, when the first set, Dr. Henry, we put the physicians up in the Wolf Road Holiday Inn for 3 weekends in a row, and they duked it out and created the first one. Well, then we had to go to 2 separate protocols because, I don't know, that was a better way. Well, guess what, folks? We're going back to 1 again. And to be honest, that makes a lot of sense for a couple of reasons. If you look at the curriculums now, they are building blocks onto the other. So basically, if you're got to take CFR, doesn't get any more information about how to take a blood pressure than a basic EMT, or how to take a pulse, or how to take a set of respirations. They're all the same. And that allows for more modularized approaches. And that's why that's that way, because it's a standard of everybody should be doing it the same way. So details to follow on that. On a regional note, I am doing a number of, how shall I say this, unique cases these days that have been identified through different QA processes. Now, one of the ones that I do want to share for a minute is this. If you're at a service where you are electronically downloading your PCR to one of the vendors to get it into the national bridge to get it out for data, okay? There's ePCR, there's ADA, there's 8 or 10 of them around right now that are gold standard compliant. When you download that into the chart, you create what they call a PCO file. What the PCO file is, and it's a data thing that Zoll has and Physio has, and I think Marquette does. Most of them have it. What it is from the minute you turn on the button till the minute you shut it off, you can look at anything that occurred with that monitor during the entire time, You can see each individual, everything shows up in that PCO file. Now you have to have a special set of software to read it, but it's doable. Now, in our protocols, it says, as an example, the first blood pressure shall be manual. Okay. Now I've been doing this a long time, and I hear some interesting ways now to take blood pressures using the machines. Okay. You put on the cuff, you press the auto BP, and then I palpate the blood pressure. Okay, and when the numbers don't come out even, or odd, they go in and edit that and call that a manual blood pressure. And then, you know, oh, I don't trust that pulse ox probe. I think that had it wrong. It said it was 60 I think it was more like 90. And they start editing these charts. And then the worst case scenario is some of them carry around these little thumb drive things, you know. And what they do is they have a pre-written PCR that they just plug in, and kind of that, all of a sudden all their charts look pretty close all the time. They don't want to type in error. Folks, you need to be, people are very creative with this stuff. You need to be looking at a service level, what's going on. And if they're all looking the same, you might want to say, they're either real good at just, boy, they type out every time that way, or maybe they might be doing something you might not be thrilled about, and especially your attorneys and other folks. And remember, the auditing and changing of that stuff, okay, these are business records we keep. They are important business records, they are charts. And now, son of a gun, 800 now allows that if you don't complete a PCR, okay, that's chargeable under 800. So there's this little policy statement which is also alluded in that everybody's supposed to leave some form of documentation at the ED before you leave. And I got, well, John, what if they haven't really started the chart, but they'll do it when they get home? It's like, no. They sit at the ER, like, I remember how this is done. I do, I really do. John Smith, chief complaint is this, da-da-da-da. And then you copy it and you give it to the staff, and then you know what you should be doing? Scanning that into your records so you know what you left the ED, and you can prove you actually left stuff at the ED. Okay?
Right. You had the regional drop form.
Ah, ding, ding, ding. And that's why each REMAC has made, and REMAC has the power to authorize what systems will be used. And as an example, you have some of them that do this quick report thing where you can generate out and they'll send electronically a quick report that isn't the full PCR, which says this is a draft of what it is and give you the information. That's acceptable too, okay, if you guys approve it. So I just remind everybody that these are fun little educational issues. I've been doing a lot of interesting casework lately. So just word to the wise.
Hey, John, since you brought that up, I did have a question. I'm glad you triggered it in my mind. In the Part 800 under patient contact.
Oh, yeah.
What one person thinks is patient contact, somebody else doesn't. This is what it says. So I would like you to clarify it for me. Patient contact means that the certificate holder has assessed the patient and the circumstances in which the patient is found when responding to a request for emergency medical services, and, not or, and that the patient has either accepted care or the patient's acceptance of care is implied from the circumstances or from his or her inability to respond.
Yeah.
How about if the patient
That's
doesn't
cool.
accept?
All right, hold on, keep reading, because
That's all. Oh, that's all I had under here. Under
yeah, no, there's more. You know, let me do a couple things. You got to go back a little, and you got to jump a couple pages after that. All right, let me do the back first.
Yeah.
When you're responding as part of the organized pre-hospital care system, that's the key to that. As an example, I'm camping up at some place and somebody twists their ankle and I go, hi, let me give you a little help here, and I'm not part of the system. I'm not expected to, I can tell them, call an ambulance, yada, 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 but I'm off duty and I'm not holding myself out to be an EMT, and I just provide some I don't need to do PCR on that call, okay? Because, now, if you're smart, you ought to carry a couple blank ones with you so you got something to do a refusal. But technically, because I've got to tell you, documentation, the job ain't done till the paperwork's right. Anyway, now, that being said, that's issue number one. Now, the premise you're into, by the way, is you're responding as part of the organized pre-hospital care system. All right, now, What that verbiage, there's 3 verbiages in there, and I'm going to do them loosely, and I'd be happy to look at it afterwards. And I'm still learning this piece of the code. I don't have it in front of me, but one is, okay, you treat them and you transport them. And further on about abandonment, I think later it talks about turning over a higher level of care, equal level of care,
Right.
or doing a patient refusal. Okay, because it talks about if you do a signed refusal, then you can leave the patient.
Right.
Okay, because they have a right to refuse. The one you just read is covering what is implied consent.
Right.
Okay?
Yes, either.
In other words, okay, if I'm unconscious, unresponsive, I can't give consent, we're going to assume you want me to get care. I wake up and go, I'm Jehovah's Witness and don't give me that blood, I have a right to say, don't do that. But if I hung blood before you knew that, I didn't violate your rights, I just assumed you did. Then do you see it? Okay? Similarly, when the patient, how do I want to say this? When the patient is underage, same idea. They can't technically refuse, so we assume they want care. And that's what that whole section is dealing with, the implied consent. The other one that comes up as the other hot button item is the whole abandonment issue thing. Now, the questions come up about, well, it talks about multi-agency response. And what's that mean when you're doing a multi-agency response and you could potentially not be held for abandonment? That's the legalese for saying we're doing an MCI, folks. Or even not an MCI. I got, 4 patients in downtown Syracuse, okay? And I'm the first-in practitioner. I triage you, I triage you, I triage you. By virtue of me leaving your side because you're 50, I could argue, or attorneys could argue, I abandoned you. I abandoned her, okay, to go to the next one. That is what that's meant to address, in that you're not abandoning them. Right, okay, and that's what that's meant to address, okay? So you see, Deb, how they kind of all go together and work together, one dovetailing into the other. And so if you read it individually, it doesn't make sense.
It did.
When you read it all as the whole section, both before with the response as part of the organized pre-hospital care system, and then take it into the abandonment section, that's how it all works.
Okay.
Now, one other thing, if I could, on that while we're at it, and I'll do the last question of the week. I've been feeling a lot. You will notice one of the big changes in there now under criminal conviction and conviction stuff was it used to say, okay, you have to have a criminal conviction. That's how you can get your card taken away. Now it says have a criminal conviction or be found to have done something inappropriate by a governmental agency. Doesn't have to be a criminal conviction. So if I'm an unscrupulous EMT and I steal drug off that ambulance and I give you an incident report or sign a statement, but you agreed as part of the severance to terminate me for that act, okay, and don't call the cops because, we don't want to know that, and I come in and find that out because now it's a reportable incident, okay, guess what? I can take them as the health department to a hearing and they don't need to be criminally convicted.
Is that non-criminal offense?
You got it.
I think that also has to do with the compliance portion with CMS, and if you're on the exclusion list, that you can do it that way as well.
And it ties in also to the HIPAA issues and privacy stuff. So the feds walk in and say you violated the privacy by selling. And you get people do some interesting things. I'll leave it at that with data that they shouldn't, and photos and internet postings and so forth. So anyway, I just point all that out. It's there, it's changing, and you all need to be aware of it. Okay, and we're all still learning pieces of this as we go through. So those are great questions, Deb. Great questions.
I've been studying it,
Well, I have too, and we've had a couple of conversations of, where it's going and so forth, and, I'm still learning pieces of it.
Thank you for that.
No problem. Thank you.
Anything else, Jen? Any questions for Jen? Moving on to old business, spring fling. I gave you the reconciliation report. I believe that's accurate. I will go through it again just to make sure I have all the expenses there. Our registrations for Saturday, we were at 329 for Saturday. We were at just shy of 300 for Friday. And Thursday night, Ann was telling me when she started the pre-conference, she had like 10, 15, 20 people. We had 180 people Thursday night. So we had a very large turnout for that. We kind of did some new things this year. We had done the Friday night pizza and wings. That seemed to go over very well. We had 90 people that did that. We had a DJ that was paid for by Air Methods, and she did some trivia things. We did some trivia medical questions and handed out some Air Methods things, and people seemed to enjoy that. I had added a photo booth, which went over very well. People really enjoyed that and had a lot of different pictures done. Mike Kennedy has never, and probably will never look at popcorn again after the 510 bags of popcorn that he bagged that got eaten over those 2.5 days. The popcorn was a big hit. The hands-on was good, except we had people that, well, I was told that I must have signed them up for that because they didn't sign up for that, and we had that harangue. I think that people enjoy the hands-on, but what I want to look at doing is maybe doing a hands-on day in November and letting people come in and do stations. It's just too much with everything else there trying to do that, and making sure that the stations are full and that they're not over full and that people get to go through it. So I think that the hands-on is good, but I'm afraid that it just doesn't work for that day. I think Don Basty, people enjoyed Don Basty as one of the main speakers. I thought he did a good job. A lot of positive on the shirts, the college shirts, and a lot of other people that wanted the t-shirts. So it is what it is. So we do have some shirts left if anybody does want them. I've got about 40 shirts left, so people can see me if they are interested. I have the sizes and the colors that we have. The refreshments and the snacks for the breaks that we took over seemed to work much better. There was plenty of food. Nobody went away hungry. I do have quite a bit of soda left, which I'll talk about what I was going to use it for, but we're canceled that. So that is the overall for the Spring Fling. I don't know if anybody has any questions on any of the expenses or anything showing on here. I'd like to thank those that helped. Dottie Suter, her class, did a lot of copying for us ahead of time, so that was taken care of. Ron was there for the time frame and assisted me with some vendor issues and some of that stuff. And I don't know how to get around the problem with people showing up that aren't registered. I just don't know what to do, and they get frustrated because we can't generate a barcode for them right there. We had problems with the internet. I believe we used Todd's phone, made it a hotspot, because there was so many people on with their cell phones that it just bird dogged it down. We just couldn't get on to generate barcodes and to do some things. I guess you're always going to have that, but people said, well, I've been coming for 16 years. You should have known I was going to be here. And I'm like, you're right. I should have known that. So I don't know how to get around that. I don't know how to get around people.
You will never, I mean, those issues have been ongoing, and every year you put a little something in place to try and combat those, and it still happens.
Something on the barcodes that may help is, like, I've got a P-Touch label printer at the fire station. It's actually mine, but it's there. It'll do any barcode you want. QR codes, everything else. So if it's something that could be used by the program agency anyhow, you just got to bring it down, hook up to a computer, and it'll turn out whatever kind of barcode you want.
Well, the name tag, the database does that. The Avery labels, you just have to go into their site to put the name in, and it generates the barcode.
What I'm saying is that this would allow you to, even if you hand write their name tag, you generate a label, just a small label with that barcode on it, and you're done.
That's a good idea.
So I thought Janine was very happy with not having to worry about the snacks and all that and concentrate on the other meals. I made sure that I went to lunch last both days and there was plenty of food left. We didn't have the issues of there not being the food or having to put extra things out that weren't on there, so that seemed to work well. So, pardon?
Seemed to do better this year than last year.
She was able to concentrate on that and not worry about the other. So, I did try to poll a lot of people on the thoughts of looking at moving it, and people are pretty adamant that they like it there and they want to see it stay there. I told them that, you know, it's just getting more difficult to put people in that room. When we go to Baltimore to the EMS today and you go to the conferences, you don't have tables, there's just chairs, and that's always an option down the road if that's where people want to see it stay, is get rid of the tables and we could fit more people in there with that. I don't know what group it was, but when we were cleaning up the tables between groups, they had like 5 totes of cookies and everything. And they said they were taking all their stuff home because they didn't know there was going to be all the other food out there. So
Morristown Fire Department does it every year.
So there was a lot of food in there. So.
Yep, I know what table to go to.
If they want to stay there, that's one more for the signing up on time. The limit this many people and you're done.
Well, I had somebody call me Thursday morning. We were loading up the trailer to take it up there, and he wanted to register, and I said I can't do it. He said, well, you let me do it last year, and I said, well, that's even more reason why I shouldn't this year. And he says, well, I guess I'm gonna lose my EMT card. And I said, I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's Thursday morning, we're loading the trailer, I'm heading to the bay to unload it with all the stuff, so, but,
and it's hard, and, you know, we always try to accommodate, and, you know, I did that for years as well, but there does come a point.
Well, I did it up until Tuesday.
There does come a point where you just have to say, you can't do this because it is a lot of work, and I mean, I think Debbie truly appreciates it, and I'd like to...
You can play bouncer?
Somebody's going to want to
Hey, Jake, we can come arm and protect her.
So I would like to say thank you to Debbie for, you know, all the hard work that she did, and
thank you. I really hope that people, you know, the changes we made, the things we've added, I got a couple ideas for some things to add for next year to make it just even more nicer. But I think that the pizza and wings, people really enjoyed that. The changes we made to the banquet, adding some extra things in and making it more special.
It was the trivia girl, I know.
So, along those lines, we did recognize the folks that were that we sent to the state for the council awards, and I wanted to share with you who they were. I did order awards for everybody, and we gave them to them there so that they had them, along with their names going to the state. So Josh Levesque was an EMTB from Lyons Falls. He was submitted. Dan Watson, Critical Care from Lewis County Search and Rescue, was submitted for Advanced Life Support Provider of the Year. Susan Sproul from Lewis County 911 was submitted for the EMS Communications Specialist of the Year. We didn't recognize this one at the banquet because the award wasn't complete, but I worked with the people that submitted it, and we did submit it to the state, and that was Bruce Johnson for RN of the Year. We got the thing cleaned up so that it was what it needed to be, and that was submitted. And then thank you, Dr. Delaney submitted my name for the Harriet C. Weber Leadership Award, and I appreciated that. So those names were all submitted into the state. So if we don't win anything, hopefully at least our name will appear in the book that we did get some names in from the North Country. So we need to try to get more in. You know, this is 2015, we're already almost 6 months through it. If you know some things that have done well, let's get those filled out. We have that form on the website to recognize people from our own area, and we need to recognize, nobody else is going to recognize us but us, so we need to make sure we're taking the time to do that, and don't say, oh, it's me, I don't want to send it in. If you and your crew did good, then get it submitted in so that we can recognize you, because that's where it all starts. We're quick to criticize when people don't do well, and we've got to take it the other way and recognize when people do good as well. So take the time to fill them out so that we can get them in. The other thing is the EMS picnic, which was scheduled for this Sunday. I got no registrations for, so I did cancel Thompson Park, and I did cancel the DJ and did not order the food. I don't know if it's the timing, if it's what, just didn't work, so. We can
might get snow.
Other old business, we do need to try to get a Remsco alternate representative. We did this last month. It was it was Ken Gardner, Raleigh Churchill, and Dave Sherman, and it came down to a tie between Raleigh and Dave, and we voted again, and it still stayed a tie. So I'd like to try to vote again so that we can get the alternate, so that we could get that submitted in. So Jay, would you mind passing those out so that people could do a vote and do an account for me, please?
It's not the alternate, it's the second delegate.
Or second delegate, okay.
We have to submit 2 names to the state, and then the commissioner or somebody.
So it's the
one.
second delegate to be
The
submitted.
second delegate. Who's counting?
So do we have a second name to submit?
Who's counting?
Or do we have another tie?
12 for Raleigh.
Nevada, they cut cards. There's a tie, and then some election, actually, there's a tie, they cut cards.
I mean, come on, let me double check this. Let me double check this game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It should be 12, 12 for.
Want me to hurry? Jim, say it.
It's 12 for Raleigh Churchill, for Dave Sherman, and 1 blank.
No, they added up to 16.
16, okay. Here it is.
12 for,
12 for Raleigh, 4 for Dave, for a total.
so a total of 16.
Okay. New business. Any new business?
Maybe it was 17.
Any new business?
Oh. There was 17, yes, I had one thing. I know, but I just thought of it, that AED for the Indian River, can we as a Remsco send them? You know how we used to do, people could submit people in for a recognition?
We still have that.
Yeah, could we do that for the Indian River School for?
I think your alma mater would appreciate that.
It is my alma mater, but.
Well, I think you should
That aside though, but you know what I mean?
go
That's
forward with that.
It's a great idea.
could we, I'm just asking, could we submit them for a recognition for?
Recognition is excellent.
Huh? Sure, I'll write, okay, I'll write it out.
Ex-school.
That's it, that's all I wanted to ask. Thanks so much.
So next meeting scheduled for September 21st.
That's what friends are for, Debbie.
Motion to close the meeting at 8:22.
Whoa, okay.
Ron, Carol, all those in favor?
Whoa. Who adjourned? Wait, motion to adjourn by who?
Ron.
Ron, who? We have 2.
Hands.
Okay.
And Carol, seconded.
Okay.
They're right faster.
And it's adjourned at 8:25?
Okay, thank you, everybody.